This is an example of a 70 volt line calculation. Suppose you had to answer a question like this. How many 15 watt 70.7 volt horns can you have spaced 50 feet apart on 18 gauge wire if you're willing to be as much as 3 decibels down at the last horn? The distance from the amplifier to the first horn is also 50 feet, and the horns are all tapped at 15 watts. So the question here is, if we have 70 volt 15 watt horns, we're willing to lose 3 dB in the wiring, and they're 50 feet apart, how many can we have on that 18 gauge wire? Well, the first thing we need to do is figure out what percent power loss is 3 dB. And we can do that here with option K. How does power ratio relate to dBm? So if I press K, and notice option C here is to express a dBm level as a power loss or gain. So I press C, and I put in -3, because that's my dB loss is down 3 dB. And notice that that refers to a power decrease of 49.88%. I press E to exit. Now I go into option D, which calculates centrally amplified wire runs. I press enter to scroll through these first few screens. What I'm dealing with is 70.7 volt speakers and horns, so I press B. The amplifier that I'm working with is a 70.7 volt amplifier. And I want 3 dB loss, which according to this chart and according to the calculations I just did is equal to 49.88% power loss. So I put in 49.88, enter. Now, since the horns are 50 feet apart, what I'll do is I'll just put in the first horn. So it's going to be 15 watt, and it's 50 feet from the amplifier, which is very convenient in this case. And I could put in additional horns until this wire gauge went below 18, or I can just press enter, enter, and then I have this option to duplicate the last entry. Okay, right now I have one speaker in there. It's a 15 watt 70 volt horn, and it's 50 feet from the amplifier. I can duplicate that entry exactly. Okay, press 1. I can press 5 to mirror copy that speaker. So I just keep pressing 5. Notice I have 2 speakers now. I'm still using 22 gauge wire. Okay, and I repeatedly press 5, which adds 1 speaker and 1 50-foot length of cable at a time. And I watch this number appear. So I'm going to press 5. Notice the speakers being added down here, up to speaker number 5. And I keep pressing 5. We're down to 21 gauge, 20 gauge, 19 gauge, there's 18 gauge. Okay, now we're below 18 gauge. So I press 6 to remove the last speaker. Okay, so the total number of speakers that I can have on 18 gauge wire, 15 watt 70 volt speakers, for no more than the 3 dB loss is 19. Okay, so stated again, if I have 15 watt horns on 18 gauge wire and they're spaced 50 feet apart, and the first horn is 50 feet from the amplifier, I can have 19 of those horns on that 18 gauge wire, and my loss would be 2.839 dB, just under 3 dB. And I'll press 8 to end.